5 years after losing my husband, I thought I had accepted the silence, the emptiness. I never expected the person who would bring light back into my life to be someone so close, and yet so unexpected. This is the story of how my son's friend changed everything, not through romance, but through kindness, patience, and a connection I never saw coming. Before I continue, I want to use this golden opportunity to thank you all that have been so dedicated to this channel. I appreciate you all. If it's your first time here, welcome. Subscribe, like, hit on notifications. Drop your comments in the comments section, for these motivates me to even create more stories. They say time heals all wounds. But I've learned time doesn't heal, it simply rearranges the pain until you can carry it without crumbling. It had been 5 years since my husband passed, and though the tears had stopped falling, the ache never really left. The house was clean, the bills were paid, and my son was doing well in college, but inside, I was a hollow echo of the woman I used to be. Our house sat on a quiet street, flanked by flowering trees that bloomed every spring like clockwork. It was the same house where I raised my son, kissed my husband goodnight, and cooked meals for a family that once felt whole. Now it was just me. My son, Tyler, visited when he could, usually on long weekends or school breaks. But mostly, I existed in silence, reading books, drinking tea, and speaking to the framed photo of my husband that rested on the fireplace mantel. It was a gray Tuesday afternoon in March when Tyler called. "Hey, Mom," he said. "Mind if I bring a friend home this weekend? He's got nowhere to go, and he's kind of become my study partner." I smiled at the sound of his voice. "Of course, sweetheart. You know the guest room is always ready." When Friday arrived, I busied myself in the kitchen preparing roast chicken, Tyler's favorite. I heard the front door creak open and wiped my hands on a towel, already smiling. "Hi, Mom," Tyler said, entering with his usual energy. "This is Jordan." I turned to greet them and stopped for a moment. Jordan was tall, probably over 6 feet, with kind brown eyes and a calm presence that filled the room. He smiled politely and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Taylor. Thank you for having me." I took his hand and nodded. "Please, call me N." "It's lovely to meet you too, Jordan." He had a warmth about him that I couldn't quite place, something between confidence and humility. As we sat down to dinner, the conversation flowed easily. Tyler talked about his classes, campus antics, and professors who couldn't teach to save their lives. Jordan chimed in occasionally, always thoughtful, always respectful. When dinner was over, Tyler offered to help with the dishes, but Jordan beat him to it. "You cooked," he said to me, "least I can do is clean." I raised an eyebrow. "You don't have to." "I want to," he replied simply and with a smile. As he moved through the kitchen, I noticed how natural he was, neither overeager nor withdrawn. He had the rare ability to listen and observe, rather than speak to fill silence. I stood beside him at the sink, drying plates while he washed. "So, Jordan," I asked, "where's home for you? Originally?" "Michigan," he said. "But I've kind of bounced around. My mom passed when I was a kid. Dad and I aren't close." There was no sadness in his voice, just honesty. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said gently. He nodded. "It's okay. I've learned to find family in unexpected places." The words lingered with me, even after the dishes were done. Later that night, after the boys had retreated to their rooms, I stood alone in the kitchen, staring out the window at the quiet street. The house felt different, warmer somehow. It had been so long since laughter echoed through the halls, so long since someone had washed dishes beside me. I picked up the picture frame of my husband. His familiar smile stared back. "I wasn't expecting that," I whispered, placing it gently back on the mantel. That night, I didn't sleep easily. I wasn't uncomfortable or anxious, just thoughtful. Something about Jordan stirred an energy in me I hadn't felt in years. Not romance, not desire, but aliveness. Like the first cool breeze after a long, stifling summer. And though I told myself not to read into it, my heart felt a spark I couldn't quite ignore. The next morning, the smell of bacon and coffee pulled me from my room. I walked into the kitchen to find Jordan already there, cooking with ease. "Morning," he said. "Hope you don't mind." I found the bacon and figured I'd make breakfast. I blinked. "You cook too?" "Only the important things," he grinned. Tyler stumbled in behind me, hair a mess. "This guy's a machine. Already did a morning run and everything." I laughed, pouring myself coffee. "Well, consider me impressed." We ate together, talked, and shared stories. I noticed how Jordan listened, not just with his ears, but with his whole self. He asked about my garden, complimented the old piano in the living room, and laughed at my attempt to make sourdough bread during the pandemic. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, he was simply present. And that presence made a difference in ways I couldn't articulate. By Sunday, when the boys packed up to leave, I felt a strange twinge of sadness. I hugged my son tightly, then turned to Jordan. "Thank you for everything," I said. He met my eyes and nodded. "Thank you for letting me stay. This place, it feels like home." I didn't know what to say, so I smiled. "You're welcome here anytime." As the door shut behind them, I stood still in the hallway, letting the silence settle. But this time, it didn't feel as lonely. There was something left in the air, an imprint of kindness, connection, maybe even hope. I didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in a long while, I was curious. The days after Jordan and Tyler left felt strangely quiet, even for a house that had been still for years. I went about my routine tea in the morning, a walk around the block, tidying the house in ways it didn't need, but something had shifted. I caught myself glancing toward the driveway, half expecting to see them walk through the front door again. A week later, my phone buzzed. It was Tyler. "Hey, Mom." Jordan left his phone charger at the house. "Think you could drop it in the mail?" "Of course," I replied. "Or he can come pick it up if he's nearby." There was a pause on the other end. Actually, he mentioned he was hoping to come by and visit again. Said he really enjoyed the weekend. I didn't know how to respond at first. Part of me felt flattered. Another part uncertain. "Well," I said eventually, "he's welcome anytime." 2 days later, Jordan showed up at my door, holding a small bag of groceries. "Peace offering for the trouble," he said, holding up the bag. "You didn't have to," I began, but he was already inside, unloading eggs and fresh herbs onto my counter. "Thought maybe we could cook together," he added, smiling. And so we did. We chopped, stirred, and talked, really talked. I learned that Jordan was double majoring in history and economics, that he liked jazz music, and that his favorite book was The Old Man and the Sea. I told him about my husband, the early days of our marriage, and how we used to dance in the living room on Sunday mornings. Jordan didn't flinch at the mention of grief. He listened with genuine interest and empathy, like someone who knew pain but didn't fear it. That night, after dinner, we sat on the porch, wrapped in cardigans and warm light from the porch lamp. "Losing someone," he said softly, "it doesn't ever really go away, does it?" I shook my head. "No. You just learn to live beside the emptiness." He nodded. "I get that." It rained the following week. A spring thunderstorm rolled in, and as I stood at the window watching the trees sway in the wind, I heard a knock. I opened the door to see Jordan, slightly drenched, holding an umbrella and a pizza box. "I was driving back from campus and figured this storm needed backup," he said with a grin. I let out a laugh I didn't realize I needed. "You're either brave or slightly unhinged." "Maybe both," he replied. We ate in the living room, the thunder rumbling in the background like a forgotten drum. At one point, the lights flickered and the room briefly dimmed. "Ever feel like the universe is nudging you?" he asked. I turned to him. "What do you mean?" "Like, it places people in your path for a reason. Not always romantic, just people who remind you you're still here." I looked at him for a long moment, unsure how to answer. Something in his voice, in his eyes, made me feel completely seen. Not as someone's mother or someone's widow, but as myself. "I used to believe that," I whispered. "Maybe I still do." A long silence followed. The kind of silence that isn't uncomfortable, but rather full of meaning. Then, without warning, he reached over and took my hand, not forcefully, not with assumption. Just gently. Like he was saying, "I see you. And you're not alone." We sat like that for a while. I didn't pull away, but I didn't lean in either. I simply allowed the moment to exist. That night, after he left, I stood at the sink, rinsing the pizza plates, my heart racing not with fear, but with unfamiliar warmth. I knew the world would have opinions if they knew how often he visited, how long our conversations stretched into the evening. But we hadn't crossed any lines, not technically. And yet, something inside me knew that the connection was growing into something more. The next morning, I called my sister. "I think I'm feeling something I'm not supposed to feel," I confessed. She didn't laugh. She didn't gasp. And she said gently, "You've spent 5 years being careful. Maybe it's okay to feel again, even if it doesn't make sense to everyone." "But I started. "Kind? Respectful? Mature," she finished. I smiled because she was right. Still, I couldn't shake the guilt. He was my son's friend. Younger. Unexpected. And yet, no one had shown me such kindness in years. Not in a way that asked for nothing in return. Over the next month, Jordan kept coming by. Sometimes with books he thought I'd enjoy. Sometimes to help fix a creaky door or unclog the old rain gutter. And sometimes just to sit with me while we drank tea and watched the world go by. We never spoke directly of what was happening between us. There was a silent understanding. One day, while pruning my rose bushes, he glanced at me and said, "You smile more now." "I like that." I looked at him, surprised. I hadn't noticed. "I have," he said softly. That evening, I found myself replaying his words in my head. I stood in front of the mirror, trying to see myself the way he might see me, not just as a woman who'd lost her husband, but as someone still living, still capable of change and connection. I didn't know where this would lead. I didn't even know what it was. But I knew it wasn't nothing. And for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel afraid of the unknown. The seasons had started to shift again. Spring gave way to warmer days, longer evenings, and the occasional waft of jasmine from the garden I had nearly abandoned the year after my husband passed. But now it was blooming again like the rest of my life, in quiet, unexpected ways. Jordan's visits had become part of my rhythm. He never overstayed, never assumed, and never brought expectations to my doorstep. What he did bring was presence, steady, kind, and calming. With him, I didn't have to wear the mask of strength I had grown used to. I could laugh without guilt. I could sit in silence without feeling forgotten. Still, questions buzzed in the back of my mind. What was this? Where was it going? Was I wrong to feel what I felt? More than once, I told myself to create distance, to return to the boundaries society would expect from a woman like me. But every time I tried, his warmth lingered. One Sunday afternoon, as golden light spilled through the living room windows, Jordan sat across from me on the couch. I was sipping tea, flipping lazily through a gardening magazine. He watched me quietly for a while, then set his own cup down. And he began, "Can I tell you something without making things complicated?" I looked up, heart beating just a little faster. "Of course. I admire you," he said plainly. Not just for how you've carried your grief, but for how you've found strength in it. You have a light in you that you don't even see, but I do. Every time I come here, I feel like I'm learning something about life, about grace, about how to be a better person. I didn't speak. I couldn't. He wasn't flirting. He wasn't asking for anything. He was just sharing something honest, and it left me speechless. I know the age difference is something, he added, carefully. And I know I'm your son's friend. That's not lost on me. But I care about you. Not out of pity or attraction alone. I just do. And I think you care about me too. I held his gaze. There was no pressure in his tone, no urgency. Just sincerity. I do, I said finally. I care about you more than I meant to. We sat in the quiet that followed, the kind that only exists between people who have been holding something in for too long. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, not from sadness, but from release. After years of pushing down emotion, of being strong for everyone else, I was finally being asked to feel. And I did. I worry about what people would think, I admitted. What Tyler would think. Jordan nodded. So do I. But I also believe there's something beautiful in choosing people who make us feel alive again. Even if it's complicated. He left that evening without another word on the matter. We didn't hug. We didn't cross any lines. But something had been spoken and once said, it couldn't be unsaid. The next morning, I sat down with my journal, something I hadn't touched in months. I wrote 3 pages about fear, love, loss, and healing. Then I picked up the phone and called Tyler. Can I talk to you about something? I asked. Sure, he replied. Everything okay? I paused. Do you remember how you said Jordan felt like family? Yeah, he said. Why? I swallowed. He and I have gotten close. Closer than I expected. And I need you to know that before it becomes anything more. There was silence on the other end. I braced myself. How close? He asked, voice neutral. Emotionally close, I said. We've shared a lot. He's been a friend. To me. Another pause. Wow. Okay. I didn't see that coming. I didn't either, I admitted. But I wanted to be honest with you. I don't want secrets. And I would never disrespect you. He was quiet again. Then, Mom, I'm not going to lie, it's weird. But I also trust you. And I know Jordan. He's solid. If anyone was going to be there for you, I'm glad it's someone like him. Relief flooded me. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I whispered, thank you. I just want you to be happy, he added. Dad would have wanted that too. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence, the weight of months lifting from my shoulders. It wasn't an open door, but it wasn't a locked one either. It was a beginning. Later that week, Jordan came by again. This time, I greeted him with a calm smile and a nod that said, it's okay now. We didn't rush into anything. There were no grand declarations, no sweeping gestures. We took walks. We watched documentaries. We pruned the garden and talked about books. Slowly, the bond between us grew, not into a secret romance, but into a steady companionship built on honesty and mutual healing. One morning, we sat on the porch steps, sipping coffee as the sunlight poured over the yard. The jasmine bush was in full bloom again, and a pair of birds had made a nest on the fence post. I used to think this house was too quiet, I said. But now it sounds different. Jordan glanced at me. How so? It sounds full, I said. Not loud. Just full. He smiled, reached over, and gently squeezed my hand. We sat like that for a while, listening to the wind rustle through the leaves and the soft chirping of birds. The world hadn't changed. The past hadn't vanished. But something had shifted. Through the cracks of grief and years of silence, light had made its way in. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't traditional. But it was real. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was looking at life through new windows, ones washed clean by rain, softened by age, and brightened by grace. If you find this story interesting, kindly subscribe, like, comment, and hit on notifications. Thank you.